I'd like to introduce Rick Newton. Rick has 30 years in education and served 11 years on our board of directors for the Porterville Kearney Bozeman Trail Association. He's a member of the Wyoming State Historical Society and the Johnson County Historical Society, and is a history enthusiast and also, I am told, a Winchester enthusiast. Rick, thank you for coming. Welcome.
So you can move the arrow down and we'll change your slide. Yep.
Thank you. That was very interesting. The talks before me, and many of you probably know a lot more about Winchesters than I do because it's been a hobby of mine, and also a collector, an old friend got me into collecting, not telling me how much it cost. So anyway, I'm going to start off. Did I didn't bring my notes. Just a second. I'm not nervous. Sorry. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Winchester as far as the progression and going from the early ones up to the present day Winchesters, and mostly lever action Winchesters. The first thing I'll talk about is the name Oliver F. Winchester. He was born in 1881, and he was a very inventive, great businessman, made a lot of money doing a lot of things before he even got into the rifle business. And he believed in perfection and perseverance, and that led to a lot of his success. But the first actually repeating rifle was a person named Hunt, and it was very antiquated, not a very good rifle, and not done well. And so after that, after Hunt had, along came Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson, from the name you know, Smith & Wesson. And then another inventive person, Tyler Henry, and that's where of course the Henry rifle name came from. But they introduced the 44 caliber, and this Henry was very inventive and really a sharp person. And so they come up with this Henry rifle, which was, and I don't have a picture of it. I think Mr. Michael had a picture of it up there. But so from the Henry rifle then, and people, they formed what they call the Volcanic Arms Company, Smith and Wesson and Henry, and that's when Winchester come into the picture. He invested in the Volcanic Arms Company, and he actually was owned more stock than anybody else in the company, and the company ran on hard times, and so it ended up having financial difficulties and moving into receivership. And that's when they all turned all the assets of the Volcanic Company over to Winchester, who happened to be also on the board of directors. So he ended up with the company. He changed the name to the New Haven Arms Company. And he still had, it's interesting about him, a lot of people contributed to his rifles, and he didn't have a lot of patents himself, but all these people got patents. Like Henry had a patent, but he worked for Winchester, and Winchester used his patent and so forth. So anyway, along come the Henry rifle, because he stuck with Winchester when he took over the Volcanic Company and changed it to the New Haven Company. And then they expanded after, to become a little more successful, they expanded their caliber to 30 caliber and 40 caliber. And then at that time, the Henry rifle kind of come onto the scene, and because of the inventions and so forth that Tyler Henry had come up with, this rifle come up, and actually the Henry rifle, there were a few used, because it was 1860, there were a few used in the Civil War, and one of the expressions come out of the South was, "Them damn Yankees, they load them up on Sunday and fire them all week long." And that was one of their expressions that they came up with about the Henry rifle. So then, with the new improvements, then come the 1886, or 1866, I'm sorry, 1866 rifle. And that's what's up there right now, the picture. And they had, it was real inventive, a real progression, because if you notice, this part was a big movement, and an inventor named King come up with the King loading mechanism. So now you didn't have to take you didn't have to take the whole spring out of the magazine to load it. So now you could load it from the side through that. Also, it had the a brass receiver, and that's where it got the name Yellow Boy. And then they also locked. It had this locked down the lever. And one of the real downfalls of that rifle was that it had an open. See where this was open, and dust would collect, moisture would collect, and so the rifle sometimes wouldn't function very well. So again, Winchester put Henry and some of his other people that worked for him into trying to innovate something that would work. And so then they come up with the 1873, and this was a big movement. The 1873, because the receiver now was made out of steel, and they come in three different kind of models. They had the short one is called a carbine, and it was easier to handle. The longer one was called a rifle, and I don't have the musket. They also made a musket which had the forearm go all the way to the end of the barrel, and also you could fit a bayonet on and so forth. But so that was the 1873, and as you can see, the shorter one is a carbine, and they had a ring on them. A carbine come with a ring on the other side, and that was so you could tie it to your saddle horn with a strap or whatever. Then after that, and I'll show you that this is an 1876, and they made the 1876 because they needed a heavier load, a more powerful rifle, and some of the 1876 come in a 45-75, which was a pretty heavy load in those days. And of course it had the center fire cartridge, and the thing that was important about the center fire cartridge in those days is, as an owner, you could reload your own cartridge, and they could eventually shoot smokeless powder, and you could buy a reloader for $5. And so a lot of people did just reload their own. And then the other thing about these rifles, in the calibers of 44 and 38, they could carry a pistol made by Colt or Smith & Wesson and use the same shell, the same bullet. And so that was another thing about them. And also these rifles, the 73 and the 76, had a trap door in the butt plate, and that's there are certain calibers you could come with a cleaning rod, and it would be in that part of it. And it's very hard today to find a collection of one that has a cleaning rod still in it. I don't know what they did with them. But anyway, the 76 had the heavy caliber 45-75, and it was called the Centennial model, of course, because it's 1876, 100 years.
How long is that barrel?
They were 20, it varies, and you could order them at different lengths, but I think probably 26, 20, yeah, 26, I think. 24 was the carbine, usually, and but they varied too. And as Mr. Sprague said, it was interesting. They cut a lot of rifles off. You know, it was hard sometimes to find originals because they would cut them off. I mean, everybody would cut them off to just make them handier. So they also, the 76, you could order heavy barrels because of the heavy loads, and they called it the Buffalo Barrel as a nickname. And then, and I'm not going to, one of the other things about the 76 that's interesting, I think, is they come with sights, the elevation sights that go up to 1,000 yards, and they also could come with windage adjustments. And the U.S. or the Canadian Mounted Police adopted the 76 as their official rifle back in those days. And even today, the Mounted Police carry Winchester's Model 70 in a 308 cartridge. So all these years, they've still kept the Winchester as their official. Then they did make, in 1885, Winchester did make a single shot, and they call it a high wall and a low wall. And I won't get into that much other than that the low wall was a heavier magazine, so they could shoot heavier loads, basically. And but it was a single shot. And then along come the 1886. Oh, this is what I was going to show you about the, I want to back up here. On the 76 and the 73, I showed you they had that opening on the 66, and they got dirt and dust and stuff in it. Well, the new ones come with a dust cover. This thing would slide forward, and so it would cover the magazine and help keep the dust and moisture and stuff out. And that picture's on the 76. And then this is 1886. Again, the 86 come along. It was a big improvement because it had a solid mechanism. And again, heavier loads. They'd come in like, I want to say 10 or 15 different calibers. It really was versatile, and you could order it different ways. And then if you look at this, it's got a half magazine on it. And again, those things are probably, you special order them, and people wanted them because it made the rifle a little lighter, but of course it wouldn't hold as many shells. And again, it's got the King reloading system on it. And then this is what was the most impressive improvement, was this is solid now. And it needs to lock that bolt action in, and so you put heavier loads in it, and in one action, everything worked. You didn't have to worry about taking it too far or not far enough or whatever. But anyway, so The 86 was a big improvement over the Winchesters. And I think it came in like a 50-110 Express, which is a pretty stout bullet and shell. And a lot of these 50 calibers were shipped overseas. You didn't find a whole bunch of 50 calibers in the States because they were shipped to countries where they hunted elephants and tigers and that sort of thing. And so, but they come in some really heavy loads. The fact is, Winchester come up with a Model 71, and it was in the caliber of .348 Winchester centerfire, and they said that it didn't last long because it had so much recoil that people couldn't use it or didn't want to use it or whatever. But anyway, that was a Model 71, and it was an offshoot of the 86. And then the next one that come along was the 92, and the 92 was really one that was probably more preferred than the rest because it was light. It had a light shell, a 25-20 or a 32-20, and people thought it was just a good gun to have around because anybody could use it, and they used it for varmints and things like that. So it wasn't as if it was made for hunting big game, but it was used for varmints. Good thing to have around the place is what they'd say. That's the way they advertised it. And then in 1894, the 94 model come out, and it really was a big hit. And its design incorporated all the improvements and all the good things that Winchester had done over the years. And these three are all 94s, and there's differences. The one on your right is a carbine. The one in the middle has a real short half magazine, and then the one on the left is also a carbine. And the 30-30, which, you know, there was some expressions that come out of Winchester, like the gun that won the West. Well, the 30-30 was said they called it a deer rifle, basically, and it's sold. I don't know how many, but it was very, very, very popular, very popular. And some of the things that you could get with Winchester in special order is the short magazines. You could have it engraved. You can have different sights put on them, different stocks, mostly walnut stock, but you could get a swirl walnut stock if you wanted something fancy. And of course barrels, you can get heavier barrels or lighter barrels by special order and so forth. It was, you know, they did a lot of different things. They'd have basically a model that you could go down to the store and buy, but if you want any of these other things, you might have to. And one of the cute things about it, they used to say you could order them with a peak sight. Instead of a peep sight, they used the word peak. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And now, of course, we say peep. And also, and there's that's a 94 XTR 22, and that's a modern one. And the difference here is in the 22 calibers that they make and made, they still load. They still load through the magazine, or the magazine through the. You have to pull the lever out and you load it underneath instead of through the receiver. So that's loaded underneath. And that is a modern day, basically, it's a 9422 XTR. And then going on about Winchester a little bit, they did make the shotguns. In 1887, they started the shotgun, and you saw a picture of that earlier. They had the roll steel barrels and their lever action, and they only came originally in 10 gauge and 12 gauge. And they would have a 5-shot magazine, and then and usually with a pistol grip. And then, as I was pointed out earlier, they come sometime with a 20-inch barrel, and they were called a riot gun and so forth. And then in 1901, the model come out with just a 10 gauge. It was just 10 gauge, and these are again shotguns, and they're all lever action. And as you will see in a minute, that was kind of the end of the Winchester shotguns. Was the lever action had changed to the pump. People were making a pump, Remington and some other companies, and it became much more popular than the lever action. And then one of the last lever action rifles I want to talk about is a 1895 lever action, and its magazine, it wasn't a tube type. Its magazine was in the receiver, and it would hold 5 to 7 shells. And again, it was a heavy rifle, but again, it was lever action. And down the road, that was probably what caused the Winchester Corporation to go into receivership, which it did. And then in 1931, the Olin Corporation bought out Winchester, keeping all the all the patents and everything. And still to this day, of course, Winchester still made shotguns, and they're highly regarded. And then this is a modern day. These are two rifles that are model 70s Winchesters, and that's what they make today. And the bolt action took over the lever action, and it's same way as the pump took over the lever action in the shotguns.
Isn't that the gun this fires by itself?
Automatic? No.
Oh, it's a questionable design. Is that the one?
Oh, no. These aren't. No, these are modern day, and they have all the safety. Yeah, they have all the safety. So basically, that's what I wanted to talk about, and might not have been very interesting, but it was fun. So, thank you.
That ball order for the magazine on the 22, there must be hundreds of them laying in the grass all over the countryside, because when you shot out the last bullet, it released the spring tension in there, and you tipped the barrel down and it went out.
Yeah. Well, thank you.